He handed each of us a small wooden box at Christmas dinner, his hands shaking with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know it's not much. Money's been tight, and I couldn't afford real gifts this year." My sister rolled her eyes. My brother set his aside without opening it. But when my mother finally lifted the lid on hers, she collapsed into sobs so deep we thought her heart was breaking. What was inside those simple boxes changed everything we thought we knew about value, family, and the grandfather we'd taken for granted our entire lives. My name is Jennifer Walsh, and I'm ashamed to admit I was one of the worst offenders that Christmas. I'm 49 years old, a corporate attorney in Manhattan, used to expensive things and impressive presentations. My grandfather, Howard Walsh, had always been the generous one at family gatherings. Every Christmas, every birthday, he'd give extravagant gifts, designer purses, latest technology, jewelry that sparkled under the lights. We'd gotten used to it, expected it, and honestly, we'd become spoiled by it. Grandpa Howard was 82 that Christmas, living on a fixed income in the same modest house he'd owned for 50 years in upstate New York. My grandmother had passed away 3 years earlier, and we all knew he was lonely, but none of us made enough time for him. We'd visit for major holidays, call occasionally, but we were all so busy with our important lives, our demanding careers, our own families. He understood, he always said. He never complained. He just kept giving, kept trying to buy moments of our attention with increasingly expensive gifts. What we didn't know was that Grandpa had been quietly draining his savings to afford those gifts. After Grandma died, his pension and Social Security barely covered his basic expenses. The house needed repairs he couldn't afford. His medication costs were climbing. But he kept spending money he didn't have on us, because somewhere along the way, he'd gotten the message that his worth to us was measured in dollar signs. That particular Christmas, we gathered at my parents' house in Connecticut. It was the usual scene: expensive decorations, catered meal, a tree surrounded by elaborately wrapped presents. My brother Marcus had just made partner at his law firm. My sister Caroline had married a successful hedge fund manager. I'd won a major case and received a huge bonus. We were all doing well, and we made sure everyone knew it. Grandpa arrived late, taking the bus because he'd sold his car months earlier to pay for last year's gifts. He looked smaller somehow, older, his coat worn at the cuffs, but he smiled widely, hugging each of us, asking about our lives with genuine interest that we barely reciprocated. He ate quietly during dinner while we dominated the conversation with stories about our achievements, our vacations, our acquisitions. When gift opening time came, we started with the children, watching them tear through expensive toys we'd bought to impress each other. Then we adults exchanged gifts, designer watches, luxury spa packages, the latest smartphones. Each gift was met with polite appreciation and immediate mental calculation of its cost. It was performative generosity, measuring love in price tags. Finally, Grandpa reached into his threadbare bag and pulled out 5 small wooden boxes. Roughly made, unvarnished, clearly handcrafted. They were about the size of a jewelry box, but cruder, with visible tool marks and uneven edges. He handed them out to my parents, my siblings, and me, his hands trembling. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I know you're all used to better. I wanted to get you nice things, but money's been tight this year, and I couldn't afford much. I made these myself. They're not fancy, but they're from the heart. I hope you're not too disappointed." The room fell silent. I looked at the crude wooden box in my hands, comparing it mentally to the Cartier watch I'd just received from my husband. Caroline actually laughed, a short, dismissive sound she tried to cover with a cough. Marcus set his box on the side table without even looking at it closely. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. My mother just stared at her box, not opening it. "It's fine, Dad," my mother finally said, her voice tight. "We appreciate the thought." But Grandpa looked crushed. He'd heard what she didn't say. We were disappointed. We thought his gift was cheap, inadequate, embarrassing. He started to apologize again, but my teenage daughter Mia, who'd been watching everything with her generation's unfiltered perception, spoke up. "Grandpa Howard, can I see what's inside?" she asked gently. "Oh, honey, they're just old letters and photographs," he said. "Nothing valuable." "I'm sorry they're not. Please," Mia insisted. "I want to see." Grandpa nodded, and Mia carefully opened her box. Inside was a folded letter written in shaky handwriting, and beneath it, several old photographs. She began reading the letter aloud, and within seconds, her eyes filled with tears. My dearest Mia, she read, her voice wavering. I wanted to give you something money can't buy. The story of your family. Inside this box, you'll find photographs of your great-grandmother at your age. You look exactly like her. I've written down the story of how she came to America with nothing. How she worked 3 jobs to give her children opportunities. How she taught me that true wealth isn't in bank accounts but in the people we love and the moments we share. Mia pulled out the photograph's faded black and white images of a young woman who could have been Mia's twin. She looked up at all of us, tears streaming down her face. This is beautiful, she whispered. This is the best gift I've ever gotten. Something shifted in the room. My mother's hands were shaking as she finally opened her box. Inside was a letter and a collection of photographs. With trembling fingers, she began to read silently, and within moments, she was sobbing deep, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. Mom, I asked, alarmed. What is it? She couldn't speak, she just handed me the letter. I read it aloud, my own voice breaking. My beautiful daughter Margaret. You're probably disappointed that this gift isn't expensive. But inside this box is something I've saved for 60 years. These are the love letters I wrote to your mother during the Korean War, letters I thought were lost. She kept every single one, tied with the ribbon from her wedding dress. After she died, I found them in her dresser. I've transcribed them all here, along with photographs from our young love. I wanted you to know the story of how your parents fell in love, the promises we made, the life we built. Your mother's dying wish was that you understand how deeply you were wanted, how completely you were loved. She made me promise to tell you the story of your creation, conceived in hope and born in joy. This is her final love letter to you, through my hand. My mother was sobbing uncontrollably now, clutching the box like it was the most precious thing in the world. My father opened his box next, finding letters from his father who'd died when he was young. Letters Grandpa had preserved for 50 years, waiting for the right moment to share them. Marcus opened his box with shaking hands. Inside were military medals and a journal documenting our great-uncle's service in World War II. The uncle Marcus was named after the hero he'd never known. Caroline's box contained her grandmother's recipes, handwritten, with notes in the margins about family gatherings and the love that went into every dish, along with photographs of generations of women cooking together. When I finally opened mine, I found something that broke me completely. Inside were letters I'd written to Grandpa when I was 8 years old, letters I'd forgotten about, full of childish declarations of love and simple drawings. Beneath them was a letter he'd written to me. My dearest Jennifer. When you were 8, you wrote me a letter every week for an entire year. You told me about your dreams, your fears, your hopes for the future. You said I was your hero, that when you grew up, you wanted to be just like me, kind, patient, and always having time for people. I saved every letter because they were more valuable than gold. I'm returning them now because I want you to remember who you were before life made you forget. That little girl knew something important, that showing up matters more than showing off. That presence is more precious than presents. I'm proud of your success, sweetheart, but I miss the child who measured love in moments, not money. I couldn't breathe. I looked at those childish letters, at my 8-year-old handwriting declaring that Grandpa was the best person in the world. And I realized with crushing shame how completely I'd failed to live up to that little girl's values. When had I become someone who measured everything by its price tag? When had I started judging my grandfather's worth by the gifts he gave rather than the love he offered? Grandpa, I whispered, I'm so sorry. He was crying too, tears running down his weathered face. I'm the one who's sorry, he said. I taught you the wrong lesson. After your grandmother died, I felt so useless, so irrelevant to your busy lives. I thought if I bought expensive things, you'd want to spend time with me. I bought your attention because I didn't believe I was worth visiting just for myself. These boxes I finally ran out of money, but I had to give you something. So I gave you what I had left. Stories, memories, proof that you came from people who valued connection over possessions. The room was silent except for our crying. Every single one of us was weeping, holding our crude wooden boxes like they were priceless treasures. Because they were. They weren't worth hundreds of dollars. They were worth everything. My mother spoke first. Dad, I've been a terrible daughter. When did we stop coming to see you? When did we start measuring family in terms of obligation and convenience? When did we forget that you're the reason we're all here? Marcus added, his voice thick with tears. Caroline held her box against her chest. These recipes, these photographs, this is who we are. This is worth more than anything in this entire house. We spent the rest of the evening not opening other gifts but gathered around Grandpa, listening to him tell stories about the photographs, about the people we'd come from, about the love that had built our family tree. My children sat at his feet, actually listening, actually caring, seeing him as a person rather than just an old man who gave them things. That night changed everything. We established Sunday dinners at Grandpa's house, rotating who cooked. Marcus moved him into the renovated apartment above his garage so he wouldn't be alone. Caroline started a family history project, recording Grandpa's stories. I cut back my hours to spend more time with family. My parents finally started treating him like a person whose time mattered, not an obligation to check off. Grandpa lived for more years after that Christmas. They were the richest years of his life, not financially but in the ways that actually matter. He was surrounded by family who showed up not because they had to but because they wanted to. We learned his stories, cooked his favorite meals, listened to his advice. We were present, finally, truly present. When he passed away peacefully in his sleep, we each held our wooden boxers at his funeral. Caroline read from her grandmother's recipes. Marcus wore the military medals. I brought the letters from my 80-year-old self and promised to become that person again. Mia gave a eulogy about great-grandparents she'd never met but now felt she knew intimately. Those crude, unfinished wooden boxes remain our most treasured possessions. They sit on our mantels and desks, reminders that value and worth aren't measured in dollars. They remind us that the best inheritance isn't money or property but stories, connection, and the courage to give from the heart when you have nothing left in your wallet. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Tell us in the comments about the most meaningful gift you've ever received, not the most expensive, but the one that touched your heart deepest. Let's celebrate real value together.